the unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates said that. And it really, it lands differently when you're looking back on, well, half a century, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
I mean, at 50, you could easily have another 3, maybe 4 decades ahead of you. Suddenly that quote, it's not just some dusty philosophical idea, it feels like a real personal challenge.
Right. It hits home.
Yeah. And it sparks this awakening, which is great, a sense of new beginnings. But it can also bring up some pretty complex feelings, right? What happens when that realization hits you right then and there?
Well, it's a really significant moment, isn't it? By 50, chances are you've built up quite a life structure, career, family routines, all of that. So this sudden urge to really look at the foundations, it can feel, well, both incredibly important and kind of overwhelming.
Daunting, yeah.
It's definitely a moment that's just brimming with potential for real growth. But yeah, it's also where those thoughts about maybe missed opportunities might start creeping in.
Exactly. So in this deep dive today, that's the question we're really tackling. What goes on, inside your head when you realize at 50, okay, it's time for a truly examined life. And we've pulled together perspectives from both Western and Eastern philosophies to try and offer you a clearer path forward.
That's right. We'll be touching on some core ideas from, say, Socratic thought, Stoicism, existentialism, Aristotle. That's the Western side.
Okay.
And then exploring the wisdom from Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism over in the East.
So our mission for you today really is to kind of act as your guides through all this.
Exactly. We've tried to distill the most crucial insights, the practical steps to help you navigate what can feel like a pretty pivotal time. Think of it as maybe your shortcut guide to understanding and responding to this powerful awakening.
Okay, let's get right into the heart of it then. The emotional side first. What's that initial landscape look like for someone at 50 when this whole examined life idea really clicks? It's not all positive epiphanies, is it?
No, definitely not always.
We're talking about potentially regret, right?
Yeah.
Looking back at career moves or relationship paths. Maybe those hobbies or passions you always meant to pursue but didn't.
Absolutely. That clarity you get sometimes looking back, hindsight,
Yeah.
it can really highlight decisions that, well, with what you know now, you might have made differently.
Sure.
But and this is important. It's not just about looking back negatively. There's often also that really potent sense of a new beginning. The feeling that the first half of your life, whether you consciously steered it or not, has brought you to this point.
Right.
A point where living intentionally suddenly feels like a real compelling option.
Yeah, that feeling of a fresh start, that's huge. But then reality kicks in, doesn't it? The reality of being 50. You've got ongoing responsibilities, job, family, finances, all that stuff. And that desire for deep thinking, for introspection, it can feel like it's fighting for air in a really busy schedule.
It really can.
But that pressure itself,
Yeah.
sometimes that can be the motivator, right? That feeling of, okay, time isn't infinite here. I need to actually do this now.
Precisely. That awareness that time is finite, it can absolutely be a catalyst. It sharpens your focus on what really matters and kind of compels you to make time for that self-inquiry. And beyond the regret and the urgency, there's often, as you said, a strong current of hope.
Hope for what, specifically?
Hope for envisioning a future that feels more authentic, more aligned with your deepest values, your aspirations. Whether that means changing careers, pursuing something creative, or maybe just building deeper connections.
But then you also get that little voice, maybe not so little, saying, can I actually change things now? Really? Do I even have the energy? It's a real cocktail of emotions.
It absolutely is.
Now, our sources point out something interesting about culture here, how these emotions might play out differently. Western cultures, they tend to really emphasize, individual reason, achieving personal fulfillment,
Self-realization.
which can make you feel intensely responsible for past choices, maybe amplifying regret. While Eastern philosophies often lean more towards harmony, acceptance, understanding your place in the bigger picture.
That cultural lens really does shape the experience. In the West, that strong focus on individual agency, on being the master of your own destiny, can make any perceived detour from an ideal path feel quite sharp, quite personal. It can magnify regret, like you said.
Whereas in the East,
Eastern perspectives, often emphasizing interconnectedness, accepting the flow of life, they might frame these same reflections more as just part of the journey, part of gaining wisdom. The focus is more on learning, integrating, rather than dwelling on what-ifs.
Okay, that makes sense. So putting culture aside for a moment, it seems like no matter where you're coming from, this whole process of examining your life, it kind of boils down to looking at three key things: your past, your present, and your future.
That's a good way to frame it.
Let's start with the past. It's about really understanding the experiences that made you who you are, right? Seeing where you were living true to your beliefs and maybe where you drifted a bit.
Precisely. And reflecting on the past isn't about beating yourself up. It's more about building a coherent story of your life. What were the key moments? What patterns do you see? What really drove those big decisions? It gives you crucial context for understanding who you are right now.
Okay, so context from the past. Then we hit the present. This is about getting a clear fix on who you are today at your core. What do you really value? What makes you tick? Is it growth, creativity, connection? Nailing those down seems vital.
The present is absolutely the key point. It's where you assess everything, your identity now, your skills, your passions, how your relationships feel. It's about figuring out what truly resonates with you in this moment and maybe letting go of old ideas or expectations that just don't fit anymore.
And then the future piece. This isn't just about, surviving the next week or planning retirement finances. It's more about intentionally designing the years ahead so they feel richer, more meaningful, more aligned with those values you just figured out. Maybe even finding ways to kind of make peace with the past through future actions.
Yes, exactly. It's about shifting from just existing, maybe passively, to actively creating, making sure your days feel intentional, meaningful. That's the goal. And it involves setting clear intentions and taking deliberate steps, even small ones, toward a future that feels genuinely fulfilling and truly yours.
Now, something our sources really stress, realizing you need to examine your life at 50. It doesn't mean the first 50 years were a write-off. Not at all.
No, it's a starting point.
It's the conscious beginning of living with more intention. So let's dig into how these different philosophies tackle that first big piece, accepting the past, that whole process of forgiveness, self-forgiveness too, and finding gratitude. How does the West approach this?
Well, from a Western philosophical view, Stoicism is really powerful here. Its core idea is accepting what you can't control, and the past. Absolutely uncontrollable. Decisions made, roads taken, they're fixed.
Can't change it.
Right. And then existentialism adds another layer. So this meaning isn't just found, it's created. So this midlife realization, it's a chance to actively reinterpret your past's meaning through the lens of your choices now and your plans for the future.
Okay, so practically speaking, what does that look like for you, the listener? The sources seem to point to individual action being key in the West. Things like journaling, maybe, actively writing about past events, how you felt.
Processing it rationally.
Yeah.
And maybe even therapy, as you mentioned earlier, unpacking those complex feelings, identifying patterns with professional help. It's about taking a proactive, reasoned approach to understanding your own history.
Okay. Like the example we found of John, the U.S. accountant. He used a Stoic technique, negative visualization, thinking how things could have been worse.
Right. To appreciate the stability his, let's say, less than exciting career actually provided.
Yeah. And then therapy helped him see skills he did have from that job, which then sparked the idea for his podcast.
Exactly. A very Western, action-oriented approach.
Now, flip that coin. How does the East approach accepting the past? It feels like maybe less analysis and more feeling, integration.
That's a good way to put it. There's often more emphasis on emotional integration and finding harmony. Take Confucianism, it talks about daily self-reflection. And interestingly, traditionally, age 50 is seen as the time you come to know heaven's will.
What does that mean exactly?
It implies a kind of deep understanding of your place and purpose in the grand scheme of things. And that inherently involves accepting your past as the wisdom that brought you to this point.
So the past isn't something to just analyze, it's part of the wisdom package you have now.
Precisely. Confucianism also links personal growth to your role in the family, the community. Reflecting helps you understand your responsibilities better. Then you have Taoism, with its idea of Wu Wei, often called non-action, or maybe better, effortless action.
Effortless action.
It encourages gently letting go of past regrets, seeing them as just part of life's natural flow. Don't fight the current of the past.
Okay. And Buddhism.
Buddhism brings in cause and effect karma. Past choices are the seeds for your present reality, including this very awakening. So the key practice becomes self-forgiveness through developing compassion for yourself and your past actions.
So the Eastern practices seem geared towards emotional acceptance. Things like meditation for inner peace, talking things through with family, getting those different perspectives, or even gratitude rituals.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Consciously acknowledging the good things, appreciating support systems.
Hmm.
Our example of Zhang, the Chinese employee, really shows this. He had open talks with his wife about regrets, made a gratitude list focused on his family's support.
Ah, right. And use Taoist meditation to find peace before starting his YouTube channel.
hmm It's about finding that inner harmony first.
What's really fascinating is how you can blend these. The sources offer some concrete steps for you, the listener, like a weekly 30-minute reflection, journaling about maybe 3 to 5 key moments from your past.
And asking specifically, how did this shape me? What did I really learn?
And then you can layer on those cultural flavors, like the Western analytical approach.
Mm.
Do a SWOT analysis on those past choices, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Right. Like Zhang realizing his meticulousness with documents, strength, could be great for detailed content creation. Opportunity.
And the Eastern edition, maybe a visualization meditation, having a compassionate chat with your younger self, offering acceptance.
It could be very powerful. Another tool is that simple gratitude list. Just 10 minutes a week, jotting down 5 or 10 things you're thankful for.
And the Eastern twist, maybe writing a gratitude letter to someone, like family, strengthening those bonds.
Absolutely. And one really interesting blend is narrative therapy, the idea of writing a letter to your past self. It combines that Western analysis with Eastern compassion beautifully.
Okay, let's shift gears. Examining the present, getting clear on your values, your priorities right now. How does Western thought tackle this? Aristotle comes to mind.
Yes. Aristotle and eudaimonia, often translated as happiness or flourishing. He argued it comes from living excellently, using your reason and talents. So at 50, it means taking a hard look at your current skills, interests, and figuring out how to align your life better with them.
And existentialism again, right? That freedom to define yourself, ditching societal labels that don't fit anymore.
Exactly. You're not just your job title or your family role, you get to choose your essence.
So the Western practices here sound quite structured, like values ranking exercises, maybe career coaching.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
Tools to help you identify and prioritize what really matters to you individually. Like John again, using coaching to pinpoint sharing knowledge as a core value. That gave him direction for the podcast.
Okay, and the Eastern take on the present. Feels like it might be more about inner state and relationships.
Generally, yes. Cultivating inner peace, fostering external harmony. Confucianism talks about self-cultivation, continuously refining yourself, but always balancing personal passions with duties to family and community.
Finding that balance seems key.
It is. Taoism encourages a return to simplicity. Shedding those external pressures, like maybe the pressure to have everything figured out and stable at 50, to reconnect with your authentic nature.
And Buddhism, mindfulness again.
Definitely. Deep, non-judgmental awareness of this moment. It helps you clearly see intrinsic values like compassion, calm, connection rising up naturally.
So instead of worksheets, the Eastern approach might involve things like mindfulness meditation, family discussions about aspirations, maybe community involvement.
Precisely. Practices that foster inner clarity and ensure your goals align with your connections.
Yeah.
Zhang's story continues here, right? He used Taoist mindfulness, realized creativity and family connection were vital.
Which led him to work with his son on board games. Nice integration.
Exactly.
So again, let's blend them. Practical steps for clarifying present values. Maybe start with an hour of just thinking. Asking, what makes me feel fulfilled? Listing and ranking, say, your top 3 to 5 values.
That's a great starting point. And the Western add-on. Maybe apply the 80-20 rule. What 20% of your activities give you 80% of your fulfillment? Prioritize those.
Good one. And the Eastern touch. Maybe a daily 5-minute mindfulness check-in. Just asking, what do I truly want right now? Cutting through the noise.
Simple but effective. And social support looks a bit different too, but complementary. West might be joining interest groups, getting feedback.
Networking, maybe.
While the East might emphasize sharing reflections with family or community for deeper connection and mutual understanding.
And that new tool you mentioned, role-playing. Imagining your ideal 50-year-old self.
Yeah, vividly picturing how they live day to day.
Yeah.
It blends that Western goal-setting drive with the Eastern desire for holistic harmony.
Okay. Past accepted, present clarified. Now planning the future, moving from just getting by to really creating meaning. Western philosophy, Nietzsche comes up.
Right. Nietzsche's idea of becoming who you are through creative action, boldly forging your own path. And also pragmatism, The idea that meaning isn't some grand discovery, but emerges from the small, intentional actions you take every day.
So the Western approach to planning sounds very goal-driven, smart goals.
Often, yes. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. John's podcast plan is a perfect example. Setting clear milestones, learning editing skills. Very structured.
And the Eastern view on future planning, maybe less rigid?
Generally, yes. More emphasis on gradual progress, inner balance, aligning with the natural flow. Confucianism again, that knowing heaven's will by 50, understanding how your passions fit your responsibilities.
Finding that sweet spot.
Taoism advises going with the flow, starting small with new things to avoid resistance, let it grow organically. And Buddhism, understanding impermanence, encourages focusing on sincere effort now, rather than getting too attached to specific future outcomes which can cause anxiety.
Don't cling too tightly to the plan.
Exactly. So Eastern practices might focus more on micro-habits, small, consistent steps that build momentum, and involving family or community in future plans is often important.
Like Zhang, starting with short daily board game reviews.
Building gradually,
Mm.
and joining the local club, blending passion with community.
Okay, practical steps for the future. Blending East and West, setting goals. Maybe use SMART principles for the big picture, like one YouTube video in 3 months.
But combine it with Eastern micro-habits, like 10 minutes of editing practice daily. Makes it less daunting.
Yeah, that feels manageable. Time management, too. West might favor structured weekly schedules, work block, side hustle block, hobby block.
While the East might lean towards more flexibility, integrating family time more fluidly, adjusting as needed.
Learning and growth. West points to online courses, skill platforms.
East might highlight community activities for belonging and shared learning.
And regular review is key, right? Maybe monthly, an hour to check. Are my actions matching my values?
Absolutely. And you can add layers here too. Western, track progress with data. Maybe podcast downloads. Eastern, reflect on inner fulfillment. Maybe talk it through with family or meditate on it.
What about that feeling of powerlessness? I can't do this.
The West might suggest minimum viable actions, the absolute smallest step to break inertia. Just to open the document, write one sentence.
Get the ball rolling.
While the East offers Buddhist wisdom on impermanence, progress isn't linear. Setbacks happen. Accepting that can really ease anxiety about not meeting some rigid plan.
It's really interesting seeing the roots of these differences. Western individualism, personal reinvention, self-actualization, lots of tools, but maybe a risk of isolation.
That can be a side effect, yes.
Yeah.
The strong emphasis on the individual path.
Versus Eastern collectivism harmony, balancing self with duties, traditional wisdom, but maybe sometimes harder to make really bold individual changes.
That can be the challenge, finding space for radical individual shifts within strong community or family expectations.
But the real power seems to be in blending them, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You get the best of both worlds. Western tools for planning and action, Eastern wisdom for emotional acceptance, harmony, and reducing that anxiety or regret that can come up.
Like John using Stoicism in therapy, or Zhang using mindfulness and collaborating with his son. It works.
It really does. They show how you can integrate these perspectives practically.
So wrapping this up for you, our listener, realizing Socrates was right at 50, it's not the end of the road. It's really an invitation, isn't it?
A powerful invitation to start living more consciously.
Western thought pushes us to use our reason, act, strive for excellence. Eastern wisdom reminds us to accept, be true to our nature, find balance.
And by deliberately combining that structured planning from the West with the mindfulness, acceptance, and harmony from the East, you really do have this incredible opportunity.
Yeah, an opportunity to make the second half of life a truly intentional experiment.
Exactly. Whether you're driven more by achievement like John or by finding that balance like Zhang, every step towards self-inquiry, towards intentional action, it leads to a richer life. More meaning, more purpose.
Socrates' wisdom, it really does cut across cultures, doesn't it? It speaks to that deep human need for a purposeful life, not just worthy by someone else's standards, but authentically yours.
And the empowering thing is, at 50, you absolutely have the time, the wisdom, and the potential to create that.
So we really encourage you to start that journey. Maybe take a moment after this, ask yourself that question, but make it personal. How is my life right now truly worth living?
It's a question worth sitting with. We hope this deep dive has given you some valuable ways to start exploring it for yourself.